What industries are built on intentionally misleading people? Story 1. My aunt once told me she bought alkaline water to neutralize the acidity in her body. The next day I caught her squeezing a lemon into it. When I pointed out that lemons are acidic, she waved her hand and said, "It's alkaline after digestion." I don't know what's funnier, the pseudoscience or the fact that she spent $5 on water she could have gotten from the tap. Story 2. I went to a timeshare presentation once for the free gift card. They showed me a slideshow of resorts and said, "Don't your kids deserve this?" I don't even have kids. When I told them that, they pivoted to future kids. I left with the gift card and a newfound appreciation for my single life. Story 3. A friend of mine spent $200 on a detox tea kit that promised to cleanse her system. It did, right into the toilet. When I asked if she'd buy it again, she said, "Probably not. I can get the same results with Taco Bell for $10. Story 4. My coworker tried to sell me on her MLM, saying I could be my own boss and make unlimited income. I asked her why she was still working her 9-to-5 if it was so great. She said, "I'm building my empire." Sure, Jan. Story 5. I saw an ad for diamond-infused water at a health store. I asked the cashier what it did, and she said, "It aligns your chakras." I said, "Cool, but does it hydrate me better than regular water?" She just stared at me, so I bought a Gatorade instead. Story 6. I used to think alkaline water was just another harmless gimmick. That is, until my friend Julie turned into an evangelist for it. She started buying these pricey bottles, claiming they'd change her life, better skin, more energy, the works. One day I walked into her kitchen and noticed a jug of alkaline water, with lemon slices floating in it. "Julie," I said, "you know lemon makes water more acidic, right?" She stared at me like I'd grown a second head. "It balances it," she insisted. I didn't have the heart to explain how stomach acid would obliterate any pH difference the second the water hit her system. But that wasn't the end of it. A few weeks later, she roped me into going to a seminar about the healing properties of alkaline water. The speaker used words like toxins and cellular rejuvenation, without saying anything remotely scientific. I looked around the room and saw people nodding along, wide-eyed, holding pens like they were taking notes at a university lecture. Afterward, Julie spent $300 on an alkaline water machine, which I later discovered was just an overpriced filter. The thing broke in 2 months, and Julie eventually gave up on the water altogether. But I'll never forget how convinced she was that magic was in every drop. It made me realize how easily these pseudoscience claims pull people in, and how much money they make for the companies selling them. Story 7. When my buddy Mike told me he bought his girlfriend a diamond engagement ring, I congratulated him, until he told me how much it cost. 3 months' salary, he said, grinning. "That's what they recommend, right?" I almost choked on my coffee. "Who's they?" I asked. Turns out, he didn't know. All he remembered was seeing ads for diamond rings as a kid and hearing that stupid rule somewhere along the way. I told him the truth, that this 3 months' salary idea was created by a diamond company, De Beers, to guilt people into overspending. He didn't believe me until I pulled up some articles on my phone. It was like watching someone find out Santa Claus isn't real. The worst part? The ring wasn't even a rare gem. Diamonds aren't rare at all. They're just hoarded and released in limited supply to inflate prices. I mentioned lab-grown diamonds, and Mike brushed them off, saying they weren't real. I explained how they're chemically identical to mined ones, and he finally admitted it made sense. But by then, it was too late. The ring was already bought, and he was paying it off for the next 2 years. What kills me is how many people like Mike fall for this. They think they're buying eternal love, but all they're really buying is a lifetime of debt and an inflated rock. Story 8. I'll admit it. I once fell for the detox tea scam. I was fresh out of college, living off takeout and scrolling Instagram when an influencer's post stopped me cold. She had abs you could do laundry on and swore her daily tea ritual was the key. So I clicked the link, spent $80 I didn't have on a month's supply, and waited for my life to transform. The first week was uneventful, just me sipping overly sweet tea and checking the mirror for changes. By week 2, things got intense. I was running to the bathroom every hour, my stomach felt like it was doing gymnastics, and I started feeling lightheaded. Turns out the tea's active ingredient was just a laxative. My body wasn't detoxing. I was just dehydrated. The worst part? After the tea ran out, my digestion went haywire for weeks. I felt so stupid when I finally Googled it and realized I'd paid for something my kidneys and liver were already doing for free. Now, whenever I see those detox ads, I can't help but wonder how many people are still flushing their money and health down the drain. Story 9. A guy at my gym tried to sell me some protein powder, claiming it had proprietary muscle-building ingredients. I flipped it over to read the label. First ingredient: sugar. Turns out his muscle was mostly made of marketing. Story 10. Years ago, I got roped into a timeshare presentation while on vacation. My girlfriend and I were offered free tickets to a snorkeling trip, so we figured, why not? We'd sit through an hour-long pitch, grab our tickets, and bounce. Big mistake. The presentation was a full-blown pressure cooker. They showed us a slideshow of families laughing in luxury resorts and framed it as an investment in your happiness. When we said we couldn't afford it, the salesman leaned in and said, "Don't your kids deserve better vacations?" My girlfriend nudged me to play along, but I couldn't. "No," I said, "my kids don't deserve luxury any more than anyone else does." That shut him up, but it didn't end there. They kept us in that room for 3 hours, sending in closer after closer, trying to wear us down. We left with our snorkeling tickets, but felt like we'd been through a war. The wildest part? A few years later, I met someone who'd inherited her parents' timeshares and was stuck paying $15,000 a year in fees. That's when I realized how deep the scam runs, not just trapping you, but your family too. Story 11. I once did the math on a rent-to-own TV my neighbor bought. By the time she finished paying it off, she could have bought 3 TVs outright. When I told her this, she said, "Yeah, but now I don't have to feel bad when my cat knocks it over." Fair point. Story 12. The first time I heard about alkaline water, I thought it was just a bougie trend for rich people. That changed when my coworker Lisa started bringing these giant alkaline water bottles to the office. She claimed they were the secret to staying young and healthy. "It neutralizes the acid in your body," she told me, as if she were reciting from a textbook. I'm no scientist, but that sounded off to me. Still, I didn't say anything at first. It wasn't my business. But then Lisa convinced half the office to buy into it. Suddenly, everyone was shelling out $4 a bottle for something that, to me, looked like regular water with a fancy label. Things got even weirder when Lisa started hosting alkaline water parties at her house. She'd invite co-workers over, give a little presentation about the benefits, and try to sell them machines that turned tap water into premium alkaline water. These machines weren't cheap. Some cost over $1,000. She had this whole pitch about how they were an investment in your health and would pay for themselves in the long run. A few people bought them, including our manager, which made things awkward. One day, Lisa cornered me and asked why I hadn't come to her party. I told her I wasn't interested, but she kept pushing, saying I needed to educate myself about the dangers of acidic diets. I finally snapped and said, "Lisa, your stomach acid is literally designed to handle acidity. That's its job." She looked at me like I'd just told her Santa wasn't real. A few months later, the whole thing fell apart. One of our co-workers did some research and found out the machines weren't even necessary. Most tap water is naturally close to neutral pH, and any small changes would be neutralized by your body anyway. When the word got around, people started asking Lisa for refunds. She tried to play it off like it was a misunderstanding, but her credibility was shot. Looking back, the whole thing felt like a cult. It amazed me how quickly people bought into the idea that they could pay their way to perfect health. Now, whenever I see someone touting the life-changing benefits of alkaline water, I just shake my head. Story 13. I had a coworker once who swore by fitness supplements. He'd show up to work with a shaker bottle full of neon-colored liquid and preach to anyone who'd listen about the game-changing powder he was drinking. "It's got electrolytes," he'd say, like we were in some dystopian parody. I finally asked him what was in it, and he handed me the label. The ingredients list read like a science experiment. Half the stuff I couldn't even pronounce. After doing some research, I found out most of it was filler, with only trace amounts of the vitamins and nutrients it advertised. But it got worse. The powder also had a proprietary blend, a fancy way of saying the company didn't have to disclose how much of each ingredient was included. Long story short, my coworker was paying $60 a month for something that was basically flavored sugar water. I tried explaining it to him, but he doubled down, claiming it made him feel great. The truth? He probably felt good because he believed he was doing something healthy. It made me realize how powerful marketing is, convincing people to pay for promises instead of results. Story 14. My cousin once said, "Diamonds are the ultimate symbol of love." I said, "You mean because they're expensive, impossible to return, and created under pressure?" She didn't talk to me for the rest of the wedding. Story 15. My cousin Lisa got hooked on this thing called rent-to-own. At first, it sounded like a lifesaver. She needed a new laptop for school but didn't have the cash up front, so she signed up for a payment plan through one of those furniture and electronics stores. The sales guy sold it hard, low monthly payments, no credit check, and she'd own it in no time. A year in, Lisa called me in tears. She'd added up her payments and realized she'd already spent over $1,000 on a laptop that retailed for $400. Worse, she still had 12 months to go. When I looked into it, I found the interest rate was hidden in the fine print, buried under confusing terms that no regular person would ever decipher. Lisa tried to return the laptop to get out of the deal, but nope, it wasn't allowed unless she paid an early termination fee, which was almost as much as the laptop itself. In the end, she paid nearly $2,000 for a mid-range computer that was outdated by the time it was fully hers. Rent-to-own, more like rent-to-rob. Story 16. A few years ago, I was sucked into the world of MLMs. My high school friend Amanda messaged me out of the blue on Facebook. "Hey girl, long time no talk," she wrote, followed by a flurry of emojis. I thought she just wanted to catch up, but nope. She wanted me to join her business. Amanda swore she was making thousands selling health supplements and said I could too. I was broke at the time, so it sounded like a good idea. I spent $500 on a starter kit full of products I didn't need and started attending weekly Zoom meetings. They made it sound so easy. Just sell to your friends and recruit a few people under you. But selling turned out to be nearly impossible. The supplements were overpriced and nothing special. When I complained to Amanda, she told me to buy more inventory to boost my business. I realized too late that the real money wasn't in selling products. It was in recruiting more people to buy kits. After 3 months, I'd lost my $500 and ruined several friendships by pestering people to join. Amanda? She quit 6 months later when she went broke too. Lesson learned. MLMs don't empower anyone except the people at the top. Story 17. A few years back, I almost got roped into a timeshare deal, and to this day, it's one of the scariest close calls of my life. My girlfriend and I were on vacation in Florida when we got approached by a man handing out flyers near the boardwalk. "Free dinner for 2, it said, just for attending a short presentation. We were young and broke, so free food sounded like a win. The presentation was at a fancy resort, and when we arrived, they greeted us with champagne and hors d'oeuvres. It felt like we'd hit the jackpot. But then the sales pitch started. The presenter was smooth. He had that perfect mix of charm and authority. He talked about how owning a timeshare was the key to traveling in style without breaking the bank. The slideshows were filled with pictures of beautiful families laughing on tropical beaches, and the sales rep kept repeating phrases like, "an investment in your future," and "something you can pass down to your children." It all sounded so appealing. Then came the price. For a down payment of $5,000 and an annual fee of $1,200, we could own 1 week at this resort every year. My girlfriend looked at me like she was ready to sign the paperwork right then and there, but something felt off. When I asked about canceling or selling the timeshare if we ever changed our minds, the salesman got cagey. "You won't want to sell it," he said. "This is a lifetime commitment." That set off alarm bells. I started asking more questions. What if we couldn't afford the fees down the line? What if the resort went under? He dodged everyone, instead steering the conversation back to how much we deserved this lifestyle. After 3 hours of pressure, we finally walked out without signing anything, but not before they handed us a guilt trip about wasting their time. A few weeks later, I did some digging and found horror stories online. People stuck with timeshares they couldn't sell, annual fees that doubled over time, and contracts that were nearly impossible to break. Some even passed the burden onto their kids when they died. I felt sick just thinking about how close we came to signing. Now, whenever I see those free dinner offers, I steer clear. Nothing's ever free when it comes to timeshares. Story 18. I used to think timeshares were a relic of the past, but then I got curious about Disney's Vacation Club. My family loves Disney, and it seemed like the perfect way to make vacations easier and cheaper in the long run. I went to one of their presentations, and honestly, it was slick. Polished videos, charming sales reps, and every trick in the book to make you feel like you'd be joining some exclusive club. I almost signed up, but something didn't sit right. The yearly maintenance fees were already steep, and they were guaranteed to go up over time. Plus, I'd only be allowed to book specific weeks, and there were all these restrictions about trading points if I wanted to stay somewhere else. I did some research afterward and found people stuck with these contracts for decades. Some couldn't sell them, even at a loss, because the market was so flooded with resales. It blew my mind that people would pay tens of thousands for what basically amounted to prepaying for hotel rooms with a bunch of strings attached. I'm glad I walked away, but I still think about how close I came to falling for it. Story 19. My first brush with the greenwashing industry was in college when I started buying eco-friendly bottled water. The packaging was plastered with leaves and claims like 100% sustainable and environmentally conscious. I felt good about my choice until I took a sustainability class. My professor explained that most of these claims are just marketing tactics. For example, 100% recyclable doesn't mean much if most plastic doesn't actually get recycled. And sustainable is so loosely defined it can mean practically anything. The worst part? These companies often use the same production processes as their competitors, which means the eco-friendly branding is all for show. I felt duped. Here I was, paying extra for something I thought was helping the planet, only to find out it was just as harmful as the cheaper options. That class changed the way I shop forever. Now I read labels with a healthy dose of skepticism and try to avoid single-use plastics altogether. It's not perfect, but at least I'm not falling for their lies anymore. Story 20. A friend of mine got caught up in the world of fitness influencers, and it was brutal to watch. He followed this guy on Instagram who claimed his physique was all natural, achieved through a special program of workouts and supplements. My friend bought into it hook, line, and sinker. He spent hundreds on protein powders, pre-workouts, and a personalized meal plan. He even started skipping social events to stick to his strict schedule. The results? He gained maybe 5 pounds of muscle in 6 months, which was decent, but nowhere near what the influencer promised. Then one day he stumbled across a Reddit thread exposing the guy. Turns out the influencer was on steroids the whole time. Those insane muscles? Fake, at least in terms of natural fitness. My friend was crushed. All that money and effort, and he'd been chasing an impossible standard. Now he's back to working out for himself without the gimmicks. But it left a bad taste in his mouth. And mine, too. These influencers make millions selling lies to people who just want to better themselves. And it's disgusting. Story 21. I used to think those detox teas were just harmless trends until my roommate Sarah got hooked on them. It started innocently enough. She was trying to lose a bit of weight before her sister's wedding and thought a detox tea might give her a jump start. I came home one evening to find a shiny pink box on the counter promising flatter abs and a clean system in just 2 weeks. Sarah swore it was backed by science because an influencer she followed raved about it. I raised an eyebrow but didn't say much. Sarah wasn't the type to be talked out of something once she made up her mind. At first, everything seemed normal. She'd brew her tea in the morning, sip it while scrolling Instagram, and talk about how much better she felt. But by the 4th day, things took a turn. She was running to the bathroom constantly and started complaining of stomach cramps. "It's just the toxins leaving my body," she said, but she looked pale and exhausted. She couldn't even sit through an episode of our favorite show without clutching her stomach. I decided to Google the tea, and what I found was shocking. The active ingredient was a laxative, not just any laxative, but one that wasn't supposed to be used long-term. Prolonged use could cause dehydration, nutrient loss, and even dependency, where your body forgets how to function without it. I tried showing Sarah what I'd found, but she brushed me off. "It's part of the process," she insisted. She stuck with it for the full 2 weeks and was thrilled when the scale showed she'd dropped 5 pounds. But the victory was short-lived. A week after stopping the tea, she gained the weight back, plus a few extra pounds because her digestion was completely out of whack. She couldn't figure out why she felt worse than before she started. It wasn't until her doctor told her she was dehydrated and low on electrolytes that it finally clicked. The tea hadn't detoxed anything. It had just wrecked her body temporarily. Sarah was furious at the company, at herself, at the influencer who'd sold her the dream. That experience was a wake-up call for both of us. Now, whenever I see a detox product, I can't help but wonder how many more people are falling for the same dangerous scam.